thing regarding a funeral. It was like a room. Then there were two passages, if I remember right, that went even further down. But that was about it for me because that was starting to get to me. I had to get out of there. But I just had to at least get in there to see what this was about. It didn't look anything like it could be for a funeral. Would you agree?
I agree. I agree.
So that's true, and it's the way if you look up that passageway, the way it's oriented. See, we were there in the daytime, so I don't know what you could see at night when the stars were out, from that one. But I'm sure there was something,
The English astronomer Richard A. Proctor, in his Problems of the Pyramids, presents convincing evidence tending to show that the Great Pyramid was used as an astronomical observatory. The sun's annual course around the celestial sphere, says Proctor, could be determined much more exactly than by a gnomon. That's Gnomon. That's the edge of the sundial. The moon's monthly path and its changes could have been dealt with in the same effective way. The geometric paths and thence the true paths of the planets could be determined very accurately. The place of any visible star along the zodiac could be most accurately determined. That's cited by Samuel Lang in Human Origins, page 56. The triangular area of each of the four sides of the pyramid equals the square of the vertical height, a fact mentioned by Herodotus. The added length of the four sides of the square base bear to the vertical height the same proportion as that of the circumference of the circle to its radius. This involves the mathematical constant pi, 3.1416. So important in modern mathematics. The length of each side of the square base is equal to 365 and 1/4 sacred cubits. 365 1/4. What's that? That's a year. That's the exact length of a year. The two diagonals of the base contain 25,824 pyramid inches, a good approximation of the number of years in the precessional cycle. So once again, the pyramid, as I said before, is a mathematical proof that they understood the length of the year, the length of the great year, the constant pi and phi, all the things that we've ascribed to the modern mathematicians they knew back then. Now, Molefi Asante makes the point that they say, the Egyptians were good, but the Greeks were rational. And you to be an intellectual, be modern civilization, you gotta be rational. He said, how did they build the pyramids? Irrationally? Dr. Alfred Russel Wallace, in the address before the British Association for the Advancement of Science in Glasgow in 1876, said the following: that the pyramid is truly square, the sides being equal and the angles bearing right angles, that the four sockets on which the first four stones of the corners rested are truly on the same level, that the directions of the sides are accurate to the four cardinal points, north, east, south, and west, that the vertical height of the pyramid bears the same proportion to circumference at the base as the radius of a circle to circumference. Now, all these measures, angles, and levels are accurate, not as an ordinary surveyor or builder could make them, but to such a degree as requires the best modern instruments and all the refinements of the geodetical science to discover any error at all. In addition to this, we have the wonderful perfection of the workmanship in the interior of the pyramid, the passages and chambers being lined with huge blocks of stone fitted with the utmost accuracy, while every part of the building exhibits the highest structural science. That was delivered before the British Association. That was in the British Association report, Glasgow meeting, 1876, Part 2. Notices and abstracts, page 117. The pharaoh Khufu has been pictured by certain modern historians as a despot who employed slave labor to erect his colossal pyramid. But this opinion is most certainly erroneous, for slavery was practically unknown in ancient Egypt. It seems that on the whole, a modern authority observes, slavery never attained the serious and infamous proportions that it had in Greece or Italy. The pyramids appear to have been built by folks in the off season when they were not working on their land. And involved, it's like a huge public works project, which thousands of folks worked together to erect these monuments over a 20-year period. Yes, sir.
I just had to say something about that. I know when I was in college, I had a debate with a Jewish PhD in a sociology class about that, because he said that the ancient Egyptians had used slave labor, in order to erect the pyramids, and of course I disputed that. And he was saying, well, why else would they have done it? And I said, well, and I told him, I said, well, that's probably out of your realm of thinking, because to you, no, I wasn't being honest. I said that's out of your realm of thinking. I said, because culturally, maybe to you couldn't conceive of people doing something for the good of the community and for the country and for the good of humanity and for the good of just science and whatever. To you, in order for somebody to do something like that, it would require slave labor. I said, but we have an understanding in Africa, at least in ancient times, classical times, that we would undergo certain projects. I said, and that's what it was. And I said, secondly, how could this is a very skilled feat. This is a very skilled thing that was done. Slaves don't have that kind of skill.
Yeah.
I said, and I'll use the same arguments that we hear, Dr. Ben, why is it then that we don't see that same kind of greatness where the slaves came from, if they were the Hebrews, because he's Jewish, that's why he was trying to make that connection. Even though he was a Marxist and all of that, but, anti-religious, whatever, he's, and all that stuff. And so, so we went back and forth on that, but he finally, had this, I asked him, he said, well, it was slavery. I just asked him, I said, well, prove it.
Yeah.
And then obviously, later on, he eventually said that, he couldn't, there was no proof.
No proof, yeah.
That there was slavery.
Yeah. And that brings another point. The same thing applies to us. Our ancestors were not brought here because they were dumb. As I've said before, they had plenty of dumb people already here. Our ancestors knew how to cultivate rice, knew how to grow crops, understood animal husbandry, knew how to do ironwork. We were brought here because we had skills. And that's stuff you almost never hear discussed when the talk about slavery, Just, people standing around, picking cotton and whatnot. You would pick some cotton. But we also had other skills. We cleared vast forests. That's not unskilled work. You have to know what you're doing. Just to make a tree fall a certain way, you have to know what you're doing. Once again, there's so many aspects of life that we have had portrayed to us in a way that's just totally insufficient. And to the extent that we can, we have to help our kids and our grandchildren to know more about the real basis of things, so they can escape the confusion that people put on them. Because folks, outright lied to you. I was lied to. I was told Europe was a continent. And I was told that so strongly, I didn't even look at the map to see it wasn't.
You were told what, excuse me?
That Europe was a continent.
Okay.
I was told Columbus discovered America. Most of what I was told was lies. The building of the Great Pyramid was a great and well-organized project. 100,000 men were employed 3 months at a time, transporting the rocks to the construction site. This was during the season of the inundation, when there was no other work to be done. 10 years were needed to make the great causeway over which the stones were hauled, and in preparation of the site and the leveling of the hollowing out an underground tunnel and chamber. The actual construction required an additional 20 years. Sir Flanders Petrie, basing his conclusions on data supplied by Herodotus, gives a vivid picture of how this engineering job was accomplished. I won't read the quotation, but he quotes the entire part from Flanders Petrie. I found this interesting. Priests were the royal chroniclers and keepers of the records, the engravers of inscriptions, physicians of the sick, embalmers of the dead, lawyers and lawgivers, sculptors and musicians. Most of the skilled labor of the country was under their control. In their hands were the linen manufactories, the quarries between the cataracts, Even those posts in the army which required a knowledge of arithmetic and penmanship were supplied by them. When I saw the term priest before I read this passage, I always thought they were talking about somebody religious. But they're using the word priest was used by them almost as the way we use the word professional. You know, these all the various disciplines of skill were considered priests.
Something that they,
Yeah.
they had,
Yeah. Which they had invented. The whole intellectual life of Egypt was in them. It was they who, with their nalameters, took the measure of the waters and proclaimed the good harvest to the people or bade them prepare for hungry days. It was they who studied the diseases of the country, compiled the pharmacopoeia, and invented the signs which were used in our prescriptions at the present day. Their power was immense, but it was exercised with justice and discretion. They issued admirable laws and taught the people to obey them by example of their own humble, self-denying lives. So that lays the basis for do as I do. Whereas the European stand, of course, is do as I say do. Under the tutelage of these pious and enlightened men, the Egyptians became a prosperous, also a highly moral people. The monumental paintings reveal their whole life, but we read in them no brutal or licentious scenes. The penalty for the murder of a slave was death. This law exists without parallel in the dark slavery annals, both of ancient and modern times. It is the sure criterion of the civilization of ancient Egypt that the soldiers did not carry arms except on duty, and that the private citizens did not carry them at all. Women were treated with great regard. When a party was given, the guests were received by the host and hostess seated side by side in a large armchair. In the paintings, their mutual affection is portrayed, their fond manners, their gestures of endearment, the caresses which they lavished on their children, form sweet and touching scenes of domestic life. The civil laws were administered in such a manner that the poor could have recourse to them as well as the rich. The judges received large salaries that they might be placed above the temptation of bribery, and might never disgrace the image of truth which they wore around their necks suspended on a golden chain. That's from a book called The Martyrdom of Man by Winwood Reade, page 12 through 14. Yes.
Well, they said that the penalty for killing a slave was death, but then before he said there was no slavery.
No, he was saying there was no great amount of slavery. There was less slavery there than any other place. And this term slave here, slavery in Africa was different than slavery in Europe. You probably the term indentured servant might be more appropriate. If there was a dispute and you were on the losing side, you then worked for the winning side, but it was usually a short period of time, and then you could actually marry into the family. You know, and that wasn't some old captain down south wasn't offering his daughter to you.
but meanwhile, here, enslavement meant that they would turn you into, or try to turn you into less than a human,
Right.
and strip you of all your rights and subject you to their rapes and their murders and their maimings at will, and you had no recourse. I mean, whatever they wanted to do with you or your family, there was no recourse for you.
Well, that's true. This is off the subject. I saw an old video called Goodbye Uncle Tom. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, my focus was that when they deal with homosexuality, where they had stables of slaves, male, female, adults, whatever, but they had stables of children, slaves. And in this movie, this homosexual man is painting their bodies up with shiny colors, silver, gold, and got them dancing and prepping them to be sold to some homosexual buyer for, so I'm saying, this shows maybe a lot of our people don't even know where the influence of homosexuality come from, because then there's the other issues of black males doing slavery being hung but naked, right?
Mm-hmm.
They hung white men, but they didn't hang them naked.
Dr. Welsing mentioned the fact that the only time in history that you had men tampering with other men's genitalia was American slavery.
And not just American slavery, period after as well.
Yes.
We went into the period of lynching, and that comes down even to today. I heard a destroyer, a white destroyer, who allegedly raped his sister from Duke, say he wants to kill another one and then skin her.
Yeah, I was doing
You know, what kind of a demon, what kind of
They down
what
for
is
that.
that?
Yeah, they did oh, well, he didn't really mean that.
Can't be
And,
playing
and
the
then,
rich
now I might be wrong, and someone helped me because I was doing my workout and I had the TV on, the sound down, but I looked like they had a sister.
She's interracial. I saw her.
Well,
Actually,
sister.
Yeah, she's a sister. I saw her on this program on C-SPAN that they had because they had David Horowitz on C-SPAN last week, and she's the same sister I saw. She got up and challenged him at the end of the program, and she's actually, which was kind of odd because she was actually a friend of that guy, right?
And
Yeah.
well, see, I had the sound down,
Yeah.
but it looks like I saw the caption, and where my TV is as far from my equipment, it looked like it said something like "friend of" or
Yeah,
defend-
she was
So,
his
and
friend.
she was a long time on the screen defending this guy. Even when they put up, even when they put up his email, which said he wants to kill another
Well, she did.
sister.
Now she did say that that was reprehensible, and she thought she actually did think that he was that he did write that email because the lady asked her,
Yeah.
"Do you
Oh, okay.
think that he actually wrote that email?" And she said, "Yeah, I believe it." And then she asked her earlier if she thought that he actually did it, and she kind of was like, "I don't want to comment on that right now." So it's basically the sense of it, because I heard it. The sense of it was that she actually does believe that he had something to do with it.
Oh,
If
okay.
you really watch the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
This is
Yeah.
the woman that was raped?
No,
No.
this is a friend. This sister on campus. Dude, she's a friend of.
They found a black girl who was a friend of the white guy who was one of the
Oh, not.
perpetrators.
Well, you said she was defending him, but then said,
She was waffling a little bit,
Okay.
but she did believe. But the whole sense of it was she kind of. It's like if somebody and you really didn't want to believe it, but you kind of like.
You kinda
probably
see
like,
it,
Yeah,
yeah.
you probably did. Do it. It's kind of like that's the sense you got.
And I have
Yeah.
to say, and as you know, that was a long segment.
Oh yeah, what?
I mean, she was on there a long
About 8 minutes.
time. And you gotta wonder, you get these conceptually incarcerated people, and she's defending something she doesn't even know what happened. You know.
Brother?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
When we talk about this kind of incident, a key name came up, and you did something a week or two ago that I think if we're going to help our children, we should be aware of. You tested us about a week or two ago in terms of right-wing think tanks. In this discussion today, we've mentioned a key player in that group, who this lady is a friend of, David Horowitz. If you look at what he's doing on campuses, right now he has a meeting, he's going to be debating something, and it's all about maintaining Western values. So that's a henchman of the right wing. I just bring this up because this is what our kids are running into.
Yeah.
This young lady's a friend of his.
No, she's not a friend of David Horowitz.
Well, that's why I misunderstood you. I thought someone said that she was a friend of his.
She's a friend
Friend
of
of
one of
the guy
the,
who did the
one of
rape.
the accusers, or
Yeah.
one of the people who allegedly, or who probably did rape the sister.
But one has to ask the reason why was David Horowitz in this.
What's his name mentioned at all?
Yeah, this man is he's receiving funds from your right-wing think tanks to go around to the campuses to solicit our children, or our youth, and not children. And I just bring this up, that I think we need to, if we're going to work with our youth, I think we need to get to the point of name recognition. When a name like that pops up, do we recognize it? If we're going to work with our children, we can't work with them. If here's a person like this is on the campus, and let's say that your child goes to a seminar or something and says, well, David Horowitz was there. If you don't know that person, how can you help them? When this man is spewing poison, he's paid for that, and he used to be a liberal.
And the other point is that what it points out is that other people have an agenda and a plan. And they're operating with their agenda and their plan. Very often we out like Teletubbies, la 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 la, no plan at all.
Well, or like other people on the world stage, and they know their script, and they got their uniform, and we're just ad-libbing as we go through. And we don't have our uniform, and we're trying to make up lines, and it's not working.
And the problem with that is, because I had this happen to me twice this week, I was talking to some people about that. And, and I asked them, we were talking about the sister, that sister down there, and she was saying, well, what strip club, you know? And I'm like, you know, well, the sister wasn't at a strip club. You know, she actually was at a house.
Private residence, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that happened, and another situation happened, and it's just like we don't even have the facts straight most of the time, and it's that perception that's put out there, and so we go ahead, and whether or not you agree with the stripping that's irrelevant. You know, the sister got raped.
That's right.
You know,
Mhm.
I mean, you know, most people get raped, you know, by people they know, you know, in private settings. That's most rapes happen with people that they know. So I mean, you can't just say that, you know, it's specific to the occupation. So it's just a lack of critical thinking, the conception of incarceration. It's just, and then once the facts are brought to light, instead of saying, okay, yeah, that's okay, they get angry.
Yeah, good man.
They get angry that, you know, because their ego's been insulted. And it's like, the truth is not even, that's not even the pursuit.
Yeah.
It's just, I just want to, just build up my ego even more.
And I was always fascinated at WL. People call up on the radio and say, I just walked in the house. I don't know what you're talking about, but I got an opinion.
That's right. I've heard that.
I've heard that over and over again. I say to myself, why wouldn't you listen 5-10 minutes and
Find out what's going on.
hear the context first? Yeah. He mentions Mentuhotep V being a feeble monarch, and he was toppled by a minister whose name was Amenemhep I of the 12th dynasty. He describes as this pharaoh was a man of outstanding ability, and we learn from the inscription of his age that he restored that which he found ruined, that which the city had taken from its neighbor, while he caused cities to know its boundaries with city, he'll cause cities to know its boundaries with city, establishing their landmarks like the heavens, distinguishing their waters according to what was in the writings, investigating according to what was that of old, because he was so greatly loved justice. This was cited by Robert Silverberg in Empires in the Dust, page 9. Again, these are books that I never heard of. I'm sure they're available somewhere. You know, most of the stuff that was given to me in school was just pap. I would have loved to have been able to read some of these books, you know, to find what was really going on. I want to read something about Moses now. Yes.
Seems like to me, the ancient Egyptians, from what you're reading, you said they had this moral consciousness, right?
Yes.
So it seems to me they to do what they did, maybe like you said, it was a community project to build pyramids or whatever, but I'm believing that these people were so connected to God, the supreme being, and they knew it. I believe they knew it, and I believe that's how a lot of cases how they were able to build this civilization. I don't know what made them fall, but it seemed to me they were really connected to the energy force we call Allah, God, or whatever, and it seemed as though they knew it.
One of the things that made them fall was that people kept coming in, disturbing them. You know, it's amazing they lasted as long as they did, because everybody was always coming trying to get the knowledge and power they have for less than fine virtues. I think Baba said some number of years ago that, you know, white folks trying to go to heaven. The Egyptians were trying to become God, become one with God. It was a whole different pursuit. You know, they were trying to become like God, be with God. And you can tell by what's called the negative confessions, the admonitions of innocence, that when you have a code of conduct that says that you can't slander somebody, you can't pollute the water, you can't cause anyone any injury, you know, the very rules that they, and they're not rules per se, because they had a whole different way of doing it. We're taught from a negative standpoint, thou shalt not do so and so. Their attitude was that when I come and stand before the Creator, I'll be able to proclaim my innocence. I'll be able to say, I have not done so and so. I have not done so and so. I have not done so and so.